So just to let you know how we'll do this. So I've got about 25 minutes, 30 minutes to share with you, and then we'll open it up for some questions. And so how this came about was that I was speaking at the school's Northeast Conference and chatting afterwards with Sarah Stock. And we were just talking about what I had been including as part of my session at that conference. And Sarah was keen for colleagues within the Research School Network to find out more, and also to link it to the work that you're doing on diversity. So that's what I'm going to be doing. But at the heart of it, it's about how we use the power of stories to support our pupils and also our students in secondary, their learning. And so just headlines of what I'm going to be covering in this session, just the overview. First of all, the research that is underpinning this work. The second is how to adapt the findings from the research to the wider curriculum and the work I've been doing around that. The third element is to consider how, in a light touch way, we can include diversity in terms of the additional ways of offering our children a rich diet, which is both interesting for us and also really helpful for our pupils' learning. And then finally, the curriculum support that I have pulled together to make this work. So I'm going to kick off, first of all, with the research. And this came out of the University of Sussex a few years ago. What they found, the researchers, in the faster read was that simply reading challenging, complex novels aloud and at a fast pace in each lesson repositioned poorer readers as good readers, giving them a more engaged, uninterrupted reading experience over a sustained period. So I'm just going to go through the headlines of what happened there. And so I'm very interested in this kind of research that makes a particular difference for pupils who might have fallen behind for whatever reason. I'm interested in improving outcomes for all our pupils and students. But if we come across work that shows there are some things that make a greater difference to those who might have fallen behind for whatever reason, we know that it makes a difference for all of them. And so that's why I've been absolutely gripped by this research since I first came across it. So I'm just going to give you the headlines of the piece of work that took place through the Sussex University research project. And then I'm going to show you what's happened in primary since. So the schools that took part in the research, they selected 2 novels that were at least a year above what pupils would normally be studying. And then that's all they did for 12 weeks in their English lessons. It's quite radical. We read in English. That's all they did. It wasn't a huge trial. About 365 year 8 pupils took part. And what they found at the end of the 12 weeks was that the reading ages for the cohort as a whole had increased by 8.5 months. So everyone benefited from this work. But what they found for the students who had been identified as poorer readers, it was almost double. It was almost double. Now, any research can be critiqued. Nothing is perfect in this life. You don't need me to tell you that. But where I stand, I cannot come across this kind of finding and just say, it's got nothing to do with me. I think I've got a moral obligation wherever I sit in the sector to take account of these kinds of findings and say, what could I do in my context and my setting that might have similar impact? Not to replicate it exactly, but to have similar impact. So my argument is these kinds of findings go beyond English in secondary and literacy in primary. We've since had schools that have done similar projects in their schools, such as the Neen Park Academy, which is part of the Meridian Trust, have done this in their secondary school. And it's free to access on the Myatt & Co platform. You can get to it through marymart.com. You just need to create an account. So we've got Rob Grover and Richie Slack. Here we are. I've just got a screenshot of them talking with Steve Wilshaw, who first introduced me to this research. So Neen Park are part of the Meridian Trust, and all the secondary schools now in the Meridian Trust, because the outcomes that they found in their school were absolutely stonking as well, that they're now putting it across the trust. So that's secondary, but we've had similar results in primary as well, replicating really great improvements in reading for all pupils, similar to the University of Sussex research. So the headlines of this one from Gloucester Road Nursery and Primary School, this is Yael Fletcher, who was head then. She's moved to another school now, and Lauren Haynes, who was in charge of literacy. They decided to follow the same program, or the same methodology at any rate, and but they just did it with year 2 and year 4, just to trial it, which is sensible. Again, that's all they did in their literacy lessons for 12 weeks. And what they found after the 12 weeks was that the children in year 2, 93% of them had made at least 6 months progress. And this is from a school with very, very high standards already, serving a really, really deprived area in Cheltenham. And contradiction in terms, but there are poor, there are socioeconomic areas of deprivation everywhere. But they were doing incredibly well with them. And then what they found with the year 4 pupils, those children made 83% of them made at least 6 months progress. Now, they had a hunch that some of the children might be reading at a secondary level. So one of the things they did when those children went from year 4 into year 5, because they did this work in the summer term, was they ran the YARC scores again. They were using YARC. And they found that 8 of the pupils were actually working at a secondary level. So really, really strong outcomes as a result of doing this work. So here we've got Rachel Higginson in discussion with Gail and Lauren about how they went about the work. And then again, that's free to access on the Myatt & Co platform if you want to find out in more detail about how they went about it. And then we've had other schools coming on board as well doing this work, and who have got Rachel Higginson again talking with Jude Arkwright and colleagues from St Michael's COV Primary School, where they again had similar outcomes. So we're getting increasing numbers of schools who are just giving this a go and seeing absolutely amazing results. So why is it then that these stories matter? Well, a high quality text is going to create the big picture and background for our pupils, going to take children into the space of big concepts and complex ideas. They're going to enrich the vocabulary, and as we've seen, they're inclusive for every child. And so my argument is we take these insights and we say this applies not just to English in secondary and literacy in primary, but we need to be taking this across the curriculum. Because if it works in one part, why wouldn't it work in all? So just a bit of research, further research to back this up. We have Dan Willingham in Why Don't Students Like School, having this to say that our brain's privileged story. We know more and remember more if we've heard it in a story. And so we also have, as a reminder, that we've got work to do across the sector, because, you know, about a quarter of our children don't reach the expected standard in reading at the end of year 6. And when you check the reading, the reasons why some of the children don't do so well, it tends to be a lack of vocabulary. So how do we develop children's vocabulary? Well, one way is to teach them loads of spellings and the meanings, but that's important, but it doesn't go far enough. They need to understand the lovely big ideas sitting within the wider text. So that they've got a lack of vocabulary, let's provide them with additional text across the curriculum that's going to bridge that gap. A lot of research, including my own, that says that children enjoy doing demanding work. So we can pitch this high for them without them worrying about whether they can decode every word, because all the evidence is that if they're hearing it, even if they can't decode it, it's supporting their reading in the medium term to long term. That's what that Sussex research showed. So I am arguing that we need to be using this research in the wider curriculum, including where we want to develop diversity, which we're going to come on to in a moment. But not any book will do. All right. So I have a number of criteria about the books that I think are suitable to embed this work across the curriculum beyond literacy in primary and English in secondary. So my first criterion is the visuals need to be gorgeous. If the book has got pictures in it, they've got to be high quality. And the reason I'm insistent on that is because too much what lands on good enough. Poor worksheets is an opportunity to raise our game. The tone needs appropriate. It shouldn't come down, shouldn't be jazz. I want my own talk to my pupil. They're intelligent beings. I don't patronize and I don't want it. I want the beauty of the work to show through. And then the final thing is I'm looking for is that if I'm going to be using a text to underpin the rest of the curriculum,
Mary, I don't know if
you're going to be my criteria. So if I'm teaching in year 6, the program. So, Richard, is there anything I need to be doing?
Sorry, is anyone having any technical issues at all? Do you want to just unmute or pop it into the chat if you are?
We're struggling to hear her. We don't know whether it's our internet connection or is it your end. If Mary, I don't know if anybody else is feeling that.
Yes, I'm getting a few messages here, Mary, just that it's breaking up slightly for several people.
Yes, it's breaking up for us as well.
Me too.
Let me. I'm wondering whether I'm just changing the. Sorry, colleagues, we will try again. Right, let's just share this and.
You seem to be coming through loud and clear now, Mary, I think. So.
Right. So sorry about that, colleagues. Okay, doke. So paying for the current slide. Okay, so where we got to then was using the research to say that if we want to get these great results, not just in English, but across other parts of the curriculum as well, with our children knowing more and remembering more, why not apply the research across the rest of the curriculum? So, for instance, if we're teaching about the program of study in year 6 on teaching pupils about the theory of evolution, I've got some choices. I can either download a worksheet of varying quality, might be good, but very often not so good, and give those to my pupils. Or, based on the research, I could use this beautiful book, Charles Darwin on the Origin of Species by Sabina Radeva. So I want to ramp up children's learning. Based on the research, I'm arguing that this would be stronger for them. So I'm just looking at those images. I've got confidence that this is going to be strong because Sabina trained as a scientist and then she retrained as an artist. So we've got someone who really knows their stuff. Now just look at these images. They're just gorgeous. They're going to provoke my pupils' curiosity. And we know that curiosity is a big driver for learning. We've got the tone is appropriate. And then it's got this lovely vocabulary, geological record, sediment, extinct, species. So I would be using this text. They don't all need their own copy. It's just under a visualizer to be able to support my pupils to know more and to remember more and be able to do more within this part of the curriculum based on the Sussex research, faster reading research. A really helpful page of misconceptions, for instance, really, really good. Then what I can do is start drafting a planning unit. So all my work is in draft, and the bits from the national curriculum need to be taught. And then the key question, how does this unit build on prior learning and where might it lead? And that's based on the question often asked by inspection teams, which actually I think happens to be a good one. Why are we teaching this? Why now? Is it just because it's on the next bit of the scheme, or have we thought through where children's learning might have been before and where might it go? So it's a helpful question, and I've just pulled those out together. And then we've got the draft planning going on over here. And then we might don't have to, a vocab list or a knowledge organizer, as long as these are used carefully. But I want my children knowing this vocabulary inside out, back to front, and upside down by the end of the unit. Why would I bother teaching it if they didn't know what a fossil was by the end of it, or evolution, or extinct, or whatever? So lots of suggestions for how we might use those, not just sticking them in children's books, but making sure that children really, really know them through playing with this language. There's some lovely ideas here, you get the gist. So going across the curriculum then for history, the Great Fire of London. So I could either use a leveled reader, but we don't want to use leveled readers for this work because we're trying to make the learning as rich and as deep as possible, and to teach this stuff above children's pay grade, because they don't need to read it themselves. I'm going to show this with visualizer or through my interactive whiteboard. There are books across the whole of the curriculum, and actually this is a gorgeous one. I'm going to come on to the diversity element in a moment, but this one to support computing and IT, the true story of the 4 Black women and the space race. And I'm sure many of you have seen the film from a few years ago, but this is a beautifully done story. It's a true account. And the remarkable thing was all the calculations for the first mission to the moon were done by a group of people who happened to be female, and they happened to be Black African American as well. And so you've got lots and lots going on there, including getting to some interesting ideas about diversity as well. Okay. So the argument here is we've got these beautiful books across every part of the curriculum as an opportunity to deepen children's learning. Just got some ideas here. And then we've put them all on a website with a lot of other support around them. But I just wanted to turn now to how we might use books on diversity in order to open up our pupils' knowledge and understanding of people who are both similar to them and different from them. And we're talking here about diversity in its biggest sense, the protected characteristics of age, gender, ability, and ethnicity. And so it's more than just one aspect of work. It's the extent to which we are basically all human beings, but we have attributes and ways of living that might be different from other people. And so we've been doing a lot of work to pull together high quality resources that support this deeper work in curriculum development. And the reason it came about is because I'd been talking about this work for about a year, 18 months. And I kept getting people asking me, Mary, can you make some suggestions for this topic or that topic. And so in the end, we started a website in order to, got over 150 books now with all these draft planning units, etc., to go with them. I'm just going to take in a moment the lessons from my ancestors in a moment, but you can just begin to see the range of books that we have got there at the moment. Self-explanatory, really. We do them by key stages, PSHE, RE, etc. But exploring the richness of different ways of living and being. Love this one. Granny came here on the Empire Windrush. So those are the headlines of how we can use these high quality texts without being heavy duty and sharing ideas with our children about what it means to be human in all its glorious similarities and differences. And it stops it being clunky when we use these beautiful books and texts. So each one of these will have their own knowledge organizers, vocab draft planning units, etc. So just to revisit this, why are stories so helpful for learning? Well, they provide that big picture, the background to the unit or the topic that we're teaching. A well-written book will contain those complex ideas, those beautiful, beautiful ideas. We know how important the concepts are for learning new material. A great text is going to enrich children's vocabulary, and as we've seen, they're inclusive for all. So I'm going to go to the website in a moment just to show you, the samples of what some of these look like on the teacher's collection. So what we've done is we've pulled together book plans and vocab lists. The other thing we've done is to provide additional professional learning from the Myatt & Co platform. We've brought across to this platform, the teacher's collection, all the primary subject networks, everything related to primary for wider conversations and support and ideas. A short course. We do monthly check-ins, which are great fun online, an hour online. And then there's lots of bonus material as well. So I'm going to stop the share now, and I'm just going to open it up for questions. But just before I do, I'm just going to show you how you can, I'm just going to share again, how you can get into share screen. There we are, get into Firefox. You can get into it. So the lessons from our ancestors, I just wanted to pick up on this one in particular. You go in here and yeah, so a lot of these books are already in school. If they're not, then they're very easy to order online because we only need one. We don't need masses of copies because we're either going to show them to the visualizer or we're going to show them through the interactive whiteboard. But what I particularly like about this one is it honors the traditions, the World Heritage traditions of many of our children in our schools. If we're working in a school that is fairly monocultural, it's just as important that our children are exposed to the richness and diversity of human life and experience and creativity. But where we have got children from diverse backgrounds, it's an honest opportunity to honor their traditions. And I think we've got plenty of opportunities to do that if we're mindful about it. So the way it works with all our key words, everything we do is linked to the program of study, but then we can download a draft planning unit and a draft knowledge organizer that will give us some ideas on how to then teach that. And then you can see, that's what I was talking about, the the Myatt & Co additional resources if needed. So just wanted to show you then how that works. And I'm going to stop the share now and open it up, if that's all right, to any questions that people might have.
Don't be shy, please do unmute, and let's use this time really well that we have with Mary. I tell you what, Mary, I'm happy to start off actually, if that's going to help
Lovely.
maybe just generate some ideas from others. And perhaps this is less a question, more of a reflection on something that I was reading that you'd been, well, I was going to say tweeting, but that's old school terminology now, isn't it? That you've been posting on your X account. And I think it was what I was reflecting on what you've been saying today as well, was the idea around finding enough time to read across the foundation subjects. I know you'd identified three kind of issues that, or perceived issues that schools and colleagues might encounter when we're talking about reading in the curriculum. And I did find it interesting, this this kind of balance between this perception of not having time to read effectively in the foundation curriculum. But I was also kind of reflecting on that whilst you were talking about using visualizers and using the smart boards well with books and with texts, and it did get me just thinking about the power there of a book, the power of a quality text versus what quite a lot of classroom practice could possibly be looking like at the moment, which was similar to a conversation we were having earlier about delivering something. Maybe it's a slideshow, PowerPoint, and you're kind of delivering information. And I was just kind of reflecting there on the power, or the difference between the power that could be achieved through that difference of actually reading a quality text versus delivering something which is possibly pre-made or whatever it might be, but is a lot of information all at once that's being kind of delivered and done to learners, as opposed to learners being really immersed in the experience of reading something for themselves from some quality text.
Yeah, thanks so much, Richard, and thank you for echoing back that quite long thread that I did on X. And yes, I didn't reference it here, but I will just, now you've brought it up, I will just say why. I'll just give those three examples in a little bit more detail, if that's okay with you, Richard. And one is that the reason I think this is not happening is because doing this kind of work is enjoyable. And so we're inclined to think if it's enjoyable, it can't be work. The second thing is people say they don't have time to do this in their foundation subjects. And so my response to that is, well, where are we getting better resources to do the heavy lifting? Because a lot of the stuff online is often inaccurate. The drawings aren't good enough. And the vocabulary often isn't rich enough. And then finally, evidence, because if I'm reading aloud to my class, it means that we're going to spend time, we're going to get the reading miles in, as opposed to trying to get masses of evidence, poor quality evidence in children's books. So I see a lot of evidence in children's books. Some of it is beautifully presented from some well-regarded schemes. You have a chat with the children about what they've been learning. Very often they can't tell you anything. That's because we've got a lot of proxies for learning going on. And so that's why I think we've got to be really intentional about what we are doing. So Helen's point, which is a really good one, Helen, they're drafts, not full plans. I tell you why I write them in draft, Helen, and I've got a team now of people who help me. Two reasons. Three reasons, actually. First of all, I don't believe we need to have everything tied up beautifully and laminated before we get going. I just want a draft to get going. And then it means I reserve the right to change my mind if someone's got a better idea. All right. So, and what I'm trying to do as well with the drafts, I mean, they can be used straight away, but I think as a sector, we tend to think we need all our plans word perfect before we get going. So I'm making a bit of a political point and saying, I think we can just work from drafts. This is the key stuff I want to teach my children. This is what how I'm going to approach it. And how will I know if they've learned what I've taught them? But also, I don't like laying down the law for other people. So if someone's downloading some of these and they've got a better idea, then they should be using that rather than something because it's got Mary Mart on it. And so there's quite a lot going on there. So it's a really, really good question. It might be helpful because it is such a good question. Richard, if you think it's okay, if I just show you what the draft looks like, and then I can see Claire's raised a hand as well. So I'll just share this quickly if that helps. Share the screen. I think that's it. So draft planning unit. So this is the one for, let me just see. That was the lessons from our ancestors that I was particularly taken with. So it's Key Stage 2 program of study. So we're linking it to the National Curriculum Program of Study. How does this unit, which we're all familiar with, aren't we? How does this unit build on prior knowledge and where might it lead? So why are we teaching this? Why now? And this unit builds on the Key Stage 1 program of study, which we all know those as well, and it'll lead to the Key Stage 3 program of study. Just the headlines of that. These have just been taken from the National Curriculum document. What are the key concepts for this unit? Because we know the concepts and the big ideas like boulders and building blocks going across the curriculum. And so we're going to want to pick those out. The next thing, is it worth summarising what children do on a knowledge organiser? I think it is very often, not always. And so we've just got some suggestions there. We've got the plan which can be downloaded. How are we going to introduce it? All right. So we've just got some suggestions there for how we're going to take this unit from where children have been to where they go before, where it might link to other books, and then just some general support. And then how do we know if our children have learned what we've taught them? Can they give a brief overview and when and where the first civilizations appeared? Diddle. So I hope that helps, Claire, Helen. That was, it is a deliberate policy of mine. I'm not saying I'm right, but that's a deliberate policy of mine. But thank you for that question. Claire, did you want to come in? I think you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I'm a literacy lead and I'm a year 6 teacher. I'm really excited by everything that you've just been saying this afternoon about just promoting literacy across the curriculum, promoting reading. I mean, being in year 6, I have studied Origin of the Species book in my evolution lessons, and I'm due to do it next half term. So I'm returning to that topic with renewed vigour. So thank you for that. But I did just want to ask, sorry if I've missed this earlier in your webinar, but does your website have quality texts for literacy purposes as well? Not just history or geography or science, because we're looking to build a new spine of texts for our literacy for next year. Right. And everything you've mentioned there has been really important to me.
That's a really good question, Claire. So these are deliberately selected to underpin the units in the foundation subjects. And the reason for that is, and it's been picked up by Ofsted as well, is that there's already quite a lot of work going on in terms of class readers, which are linked, but they're often very loosely linked to the foundation subjects. Pretty tenuous. They're not building background knowledge. They've not necessarily got that bespoke vocabulary, the tier 3 vocabulary. And sometimes they can be a bit wishy-washy. So, and we kind of know all that, but sometimes people think, well, we're underpinning our curriculum doing that kind of work. We're not. It's like having a really great text that expands children and has got great literacy merit, and we're going to read that, over time. These are shorter. They're not all necessarily shorter. And when we get to Key Stage 3, because we were getting 3 Key Stage, we'll just do chapters. But this is kind of shifting what would quite often be on a topic table. So quite often when I'm talking about these books, people say that, yeah, we've got them on a topic table. And my question then is, well, which of the children are going to the topic table to find out more? Because the children already know quite a lot, isn't it? I've got nothing against children who already know a lot. We love children who know stuff. But the children who don't know much are not going to go. We know that, don't we? So what we're doing is we are bringing this front and center so that it is the main part of their diet as opposed to being an optional extra, if that makes sense, in terms of either the topic table. So it's a long-winded way or of the class reader. And so it's a long-winded way probably not very helpful, Claire, in answering your question, but I think the class readers are better served through literary texts, and we can go through the classics or whatever. These are deliberately informational kind of storytelling wherever possible to support the literacy and the knowledge within the foundation subjects. Well, in all the subjects, but particularly the foundation subjects. Hope that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm fully on board with everything you said there about the literacy text. I was just wondering whether you had a website where we could go to look for quality literacy for year 6, for year 5, for year 3.
Yeah, I think some of the stuff from the Open University, Teresa Kremin's work, yeah, they're already doing great stuff. We're actually taking this in a slightly different direction, but thanks. It's a great question, Claire.
No, thank you. That's fine. I think we'll just be using some of your text for our history, geography, and science. Thank you.
I'm just wondering if there are any more. Anything you wanted to come back to, Richard?
Do you know, the other thing that did actually really stand out for me, Mary, as well, was just something you said right at the start. And it was that quote that we know more, remember more if we've heard it in a story. And the point about enriching vocabulary and doing that across the curriculum. And, you know, anybody who works with me will know that I'm a huge advocate of enriching vocabulary and maths. I really see that as being the key that's going to underpin everything that we want children to be able to do when it comes to problem solving and, of course, articulating, reasoning, things like that. So I think it's really, really great to hear about this. I'm seeing things on a whole school kind of on a whole school level here about just the power of vocabulary and the power of language and actually that it's all through experience. You know, this kind of learning, enriching children's experiences, acquiring vocabulary through quality text and through, you know, all the fantastic things that we can be doing across the whole curriculum. I think it's really refreshing, and I think it's great to be thinking about particularly vocabulary, but quality texts too. And it's just great to be thinking about those things, and also proper learning experiences. It's great to be thinking about those things, not just from a literacy or an English perspective, and to really think about the impact that we can have on the whole child.
Yes, I think too, Richard, thanks so much for saying that. Yeah, the knowing more and remembering more, we've heard it in a story, but also that when we use these kind of resources, we get better. So I don't have a background in science, but when I go through that book, I know a lot more about science by the end of reading that book and thinking I'm going to deliver it, teach it to my children, than if I've downloaded some third-rate stuff from some website. There are some that are good. If it's helpful, Richard, I'm just putting into the chat a draft book that can just be downloaded, because the wider package, there is obviously a cost that we keep as low as we possibly can. Any special schools have access to the Teachers Collection at no charge. And for very small schools, you can contact us. So we have a tiered subscription from small schools up to large schools, but we want to make it manageable for everyone. So I've just dropped a draft planning unit and vocab list for the Pebble in My Pocket, which is great both for science and geography. I tend to use it for geography when we're thinking about geomorphology, but that's another story.